Hey everyone, happy Friday. We're coming to you live from the RC Group studios. I am excited to have Mike McDougal with us. What's happening, Mike?
Hey, Jim T, what's going on, brother?
So I heard stereo blasting by the window. Is there a waterway out your window? Is that what's happening?
Yes, my front yard has a lake in front of it.
And what
So
what lake is it?
it's Lake LBJ. They named it after a
Lin-
president.
Lyndon Baines Johnson, right?
That's the one. He was the one that was responsible in the 30s for getting the lake system put in here to protect downtown Austin, basically, from flooding.
Now I should know this for a fact, but I believe he was born in my hometown of Denison, Texas.
Johnson City, Texas.
Man, who am I thinking of?
Close.
Yeah, I'll come back to everyone on that historical fact. So, if you may or may not know, if you're on RC Groups, you know that Mike has been reviewing for us for a long time. And I wanted to put you on the spot. I didn't even warn you about this. What is your favorite airplane so far of 2020?
Whoa, for 2020, it's got to be this Mustang. This thing, everybody wants to fly a Mustang. When I first started back in the 60s flying RC, I wanted to fly a Mustang. I didn't want to fly a trainer. I didn't want some high wing Piper Cub thing. I wanted to fly a Mustang. So, it's kind of been there in the back of my brain forever. And I've had a few, and they've mostly been disappointing, unfortunately. And they never quite live up. I had one of the Balsa USA. They were a half A size job, uh, really hard stick build, and you had to end up putting a 15 in it to make it fly, and it glide, like a brick whenever the motor quit. So this one is much nicer. So yeah, I'd have to say this one right here, this P-51D from E-flit.
Well, there you go. You couldn't ask for a better plane to talk about today than your favorite airplane. I have one real life uh, P-51 story. So there's a guy, I don't know if he's still around, but he flew a full scale P-51, and I might be in the yard and you could hear him ripping. You always knew it
Mm.
was him by the motor. So my wife and I, we go hiking in the park next door to our house, and we were at the tippy top, just happened to be at the tippy top part of the biggest hill out there, and I heard him. And I'm like, honey, the P-51 is headed our way. He's like, why? It's just burning. And we ran up to the top where there was a clearing, and this guy was coming knife edge
Oh
down the
wow.
golf course, over the golf course, right at us. And like I say, we're in the sky. And then as he nears us, he knife edge turns and just, I can't see him anymore. He flies away. And I was like, Angela, of course, thought it was okay, but I was like beside myself. I was so excited.
Yeah, she was going, it's kind of noisy, isn't it? Can you turn
Yeah.
that thing down?
I think it was $500 to fill up every time he took a flight. So
Yeah. Well, at CEF last year, I won the contest and was given a ride in an AT6 and the opportunity for a few dollars more of taking one in a P-51, which I
okay.
really, really considered doing. The problem was the upgrade over what I had already won was $1,600,
Oh
and
my
that was
gosh. Yeah.
a
No.
little steep. So I
So
took the ride in the AT6 and got to fly the AT6, and I had a cool time.
the Texan.
Yep.
So I was in a live chat with Horizon last week, and the topic came up of like a Stuka versus a P-51. And so immediately one of the guys started bad mouthing the Stuka about how ugly it was and how a P-51 would outsell a Stuka every time. But I thought about that all week because I fly Stukas in War Thunder. I think a Stuka, maybe it's so ugly it's beautiful, but I love a Stuka. What do you think?
Yeah, I even liked there was a control line version of that thing way back when. It was just so beautiful. I think the lines on a Stuka are really nice. But the market research says if you're going to build a new airplane, a P-51 sells better than a P-47, and the P-47 sells next best to a P-51. And then, the ME-109s and the Stukas and everything else are down the line from that. So if you want to make money or you want to have something cool.
When I worked at RC Group or at Hobby Lobby, I always said we should have a P-51 trainer, which of course a
Yeah,
Warbird cannot be a trainer back then, but
no.
since then there are now P-51 trainers,
Yep. And if
which
this
of course,
COVID thing would settle down a little bit and I could get the guy from doctor visits and out at the flying field, I have a brand new flyer that's got about 5 flights on his Valiant flying it was safe and doing a really good job. And I want to put him on that P-51 and turn safe on and let him fly.
Right. Get him hooked.
Oh, he's already hooked, but he's going to be just flying, walking on air if he can fly that thing.
Well, let's go over to the website and take a look. And so this is a review on RCGroups.com. You can find it in the electric warbird section. So we are looking today at the Horizon Hobby E-flit P-51D 1.5 Bind-and-Fly Basic with smart technology. And I thought it would be cool to get Mike on here to talk about his feelings, of opening the box, putting the plane together, and then taking it for a fly.
And I had read some of the things about the airplane before I got it, before I unboxed it. But it's hard through the pictures, it's hard through ads or whatever to really see what you're going to see when you open the top of that box. And when it's got the nice artwork on it, but when you pop the top of that box and you look down in there and you see that wing and you see those cool gear doors covering the center section and you see that blue, man, that was a neat color of blue. I was just blown away by that because I knew the story about it. It was the air show livery, and some people are all hung up that it's not olive drab. But let me tell you, that thing looks spectacular in the air, and I'd much rather fly one with blue on it than olive drab. At least this setup.
So
it shows up real good.
Historically, what is the ripple around the wing? Is that do you have any idea what that was there for? I mean, is this?
Well, it was part of the camouflage. I mean, it originally this was the actual camouflage for Lu 4 in World War II, and then the guy repainted it, and it had sort of a blue cast to it, maybe a little bit in the OD. But it's my understanding that he painted it up in this bright blue and took it on the show circuit.
Gotcha.
Show circuit. So he followed the lines of the camo and just painted it bright blue.
Gotcha.
I think that's the story.
So we have 50 cal.
Yeah, and a lot of scale detail. I was kind of surprised when I started popping that stuff up, and then you look at how the 50 cals are in the wing there, and then you look real close and you can see all those little panel lines. And look there on the tail, it's got that little notch where the hinge on the real one is. And then the rudder, you can actually see there about halfway up where the trim tab is on the movable surface. You can actually see the fairing where the control comes out. It's really right above the 413. Yeah, right up in there.
Oh, gotcha.
So, I mean, that's a lot of detail molded into that thing. And then those holes are open. There's actually air comes in there. Help cool your motor. So it's just cool. So I opened up the gear door on this shot to be able to see the inside. And that's really what you're going to see as the gear are fully tucked away or the gear is starting to come down. Those inner gear doors open first. And that's like a Mustang's supposed to be. Awesome. And the only thing that they couldn't duplicate, and I understand why, is when a real Mustang sits on the ground for a while, the hydraulics bleed down and those two gear doors open all by themselves. Okay. So if you see one sitting on the ramp and it's been there for any length of time, those two inner doors are going to be hanging down.
And I guess
as soon as the motor cranks, they come back up. So.
Gotcha. Okay, so the motor is what keeps them shut in flight.
But neat details. Just in the sequencer for the gear door, all that stuff is and a retractable tail wheel. You can see at that door. You can see the back doors back there by the tail wheel, and for them to include a retractable tail gear, that took a bit of doing. I mean, the price on the airplane seemed a little steep, but then you start adding up the retracts, you start adding up the smart controls that are in it, you add up all the gear doors and everything else. I mean, this is impressive for that price point.
There's your price right there, $499 with a 59-inch wingspan.
Yep. And bind and fly, I mean, AS3X, smart technology, it's cool for that price.
So how long
did the wingtips go back up just a little bit, catch those.
Right here.
The plug-in wingtips was a nice feature because you can see the plug there. The two white pins that stick in actually are split and they've got little nibs on them. So when you push them in, they lock in position. The nibs themselves, as well as the recesses that they lock into, are replaceable. So if you keep putting the wing in and out so often that you wear it out, you can actually replace those.
With just screws. That's awesome.
Yeah, with the screws come out, new ones go in. Same way with the plug, the plug for the servo, which is your aileron servo. Those are replaceable. So, they've thought of everything. Now the wing tube, The wing tube that's in the outer panel is glued in, so you're not going to lose it. It's always going to be with that outer panel.
Gotcha.
And just stick it in. The thing snaps together real nice and tight. So there's a shot of the top and the bottom of the wing tips.
Okay.
And then the top of that section. That center, of course, the center section has your retracts. So you can set the airplane on the gear with the gear down in your car, and it only has that 30 some odd inch center section wingspan.
Gotcha. Oh yeah, that's a great idea.
So it's really easy to transport.
From the great minds of Horizon Hobby.
Yeah. So I'm flying it with a 5000. This is a 5006S. This is the smart battery. So using their smart technology that comes with this airplane, if you use a telemetry enabled radio, any of the new ones that you bought from Horizon Spectrum for the last 5 years, it's automatically going to sense that telemetry. If you're running the latest versions of firmware on your transmitter, it's going to pop up and it's going to show you voltage, current, RPM, all the status, down to the individual cell voltage of your flight pack.
Wow.
It's really cool stuff. And Midmax, which is really surprising because, while you're flying, you're not going to be trying to look at the individual cell voltage of an individual battery. But when you come down, you can look at it. But the Midmax function on there allows you, like I flew the flights, and most of the flights where I'm really not flying too terrible hard, I'll see 90 amps as a peak for the ESC. There were a couple of flights when I went over 100 amps. It's a 100 amp ESC, so I was pushing it pretty hard.
And there's got to be a little wiggle room on that top number, I'm sure.
There is, yeah.
Like the old jetties back in the day. So how long did it take you to build this plane?
Well, I kind of made a cutesy remark in there, but it takes less time than to charge the battery. Less than 30 minutes really to put the thing together.
It is the
beauty.
Now,
there were a few mods that I put in, so yeah. That screwdriver makes a big difference. If you've got that, it takes hex head screws that go in there, which is really nice. I like them a lot better than the Phillips head screws. But you get that driver, that hex driver, screwdriver, man, it makes it quick, it makes it easy, and it's a real firm connection when you put that thing in there.
What do we have here? These are servo plugs.
Ailerons and retract and flap plug in.
And your wing just snaps in and plugs in.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Makes all those connections right there.
And you're locking your wings down with these two bolts?
Yeah, now there's a kind of a hint there that there were some folks that had trouble. They could get 3 screws in, but not 4. And I guess when I did mine, everything lined up well. But I kind of go, just start the screws, maybe a couple of threads, so you can wiggle the wing a little bit to get each one of them started before you crank down on it. Don't tighten the first one all the way down, then expect the other 3 to go in perfectly.
So. And that works with everything.
Yeah.
Not just this airplane.
Yeah.
That's an interesting prop. It's not a single prop. It's individuals.
It really is. And it went together pretty good. It had a lot more pieces than I thought because each one of those screws has a nut that's in the back of it that fits in a recess.
Okay.
But it went together. Now, I did go ahead and weigh the blades ahead of time, just, being an engineer, sometimes I get a little anal about these things, especially balanced props. But I found 2 of the blades were very close in weight, and the other 2 were very close in weight. But a pair were heavier than the other pair, so I just put them across from each other. Now, if you'd have put the 2 heavy ones next to each other, then you may have had to balance it out. But it runs so smooth and it runs true, and I haven't had any other issues. I didn't even have to balance it. I just put it on there and ran it up good.
And you weighed those on a little scale, digital
scale?
A
gram scale. Yeah, a little gram scale. Now, here was an issue I had right off the bat. Trying to take that battery tray, which the battery tray is a really neat feature. You put your battery on it, strap it down, then slide it all the way up in the nose, and it kind of gets it far forward, under that hatch where it needs to be for CG, and it makes it easy to get in and easy to get out, in theory. Well, the problem is that square box there, which is a choke, would hang up on those straps. So the battery straps hang down a little bit below that slide that's in there, and every time you put it in or every time you took it out, it would hang up. So you get it halfway in and have to fight it in. You get it halfway out, you'd have to fight it out. So I looked at it, and a couple of things. The ESC leads are just kind of hanging loose. that big choke is sitting in that recess, but it can come up a little bit. And as soon as it comes up, it's got square edges. It catches on those battery straps. So what I ended up doing, if you'll scroll down just a little bit there, is I went ahead and glued the bottoms of the battery straps. Once I got them to where they would go around to 7,000 and a 5,000, give you plenty of access to the buckle and everything, I just glued the part that was under that tray directly to the tray. That was cool. Then I glued that choke to the side of the opening. I taped down the ESC leads, and I put a cut. You can see where that little drawing is there with the X's. I actually carved out that little piece of foam to allow that ESC, or the big battery lead, to kind of sit down in that recess, and that keeps it below the arc of that tray, pulling it in and pushing it out.
Gotcha.
So that worked pretty well.
So we have our AS3X. I know that Horizon always likes to talk about that. It certainly makes things like this flyable.
It is. And, I'm a big proponent of AS3X. I've got it on a lot of my airplanes. I purposefully buy receivers that have that, not just the safe system, but the AS3X, and be able to tune the AS3X for the airplane. How much assistance do you want? A lot of times I'll fly it without it. I've got an expert mode, an intermediate mode, and an AS3X mode on mine. And so one of them is no assistance at all. But you know what? Here in Texas, we get windy days every once in a while, and sometimes they'll sneak up on you. And it's really nice to have that extra layer of stabilization. The plane looks like it's flying on a dead calm day, and it's up there being buffeted around by 15-mile-an-hour wind.
It just flies big.
It flies a lot bigger. So here's some of the smart stuff. So that looks like the Midmax screen. And you can see some of the voltages, the highs and lows, the currents from the flight. And it even gives you temperatures. I mean, if you want to see the temperatures of the BEC, the FETs on the BEC, or the FETs on the main ESC itself, all those temperatures are in there. You can see how hard you're making it work. It's just kind of cool, nerdy stuff. Or, it's helpful. If you're getting enough airflow across it to keep it cool. The telemetry is really nice.
And I guess that's where the IX-12 shines, because it's all right there in front of you.
Well, you can see it a lot better than on some of the. Now I flew it with my DX6. Okay, I've got a DX6E. It flies exactly the same with the DX6E as it does with the IX-12, and it gives you these same screens. Now they're not in color and they're not quite as pretty as that, but the data is all there. It's still there. It doesn't matter whether you're at an economy, entry-level transmitter, or at the top of the line. You still get the same information. That's really, that when Horizon decided to do that, that was pretty smart with Spectrum to cover all their bases that way.
And now it comes to the flying. Oh
yeah, and that's the fun part. I mean, you always get the jitters the first time you're flying an airplane, and you go and where do I fly? Do I take the still pictures? You take the beauty shots while it's on the ground, and then okay, I'm going to get the video. I really need to get the video. I can take the still pictures in the air next, but I really want to get the video first. But here's a neat little deal I did. I went ahead and did what I call an idle up, which ran the ESC about, maybe 600 RPM, and put it on a switch function. So, to me, a P-51 sitting on the ramp without the prop ticking over, it really doesn't look much like a P-51. It doesn't look real. So I went ahead and put that idle up feature in there. And it turns out it kind of helps on the landings too. If you see where it first, see it turning over there?
Oh yeah, that's super cool.
And that's just sitting there at idle. Of course, it's low enough to where it doesn't taxi, but it lets it go on out. And you're worried about, okay, do I have my rates right? But I went ahead, I fly with in this case, the AS3X on, not safe, but AS3X is on. But when I stop it there, it's still ticking over because it's sitting at that 600 RPM.
Gotcha.
Now, when you're giving it the power, a lot of guys are making mistakes taking this thing off by just cobbing the throttle. And it'll veer left really bad if you do that. So you really just kind of ease the throttle into it, and it comes on off really nice. And then coming back, you can see these gear coming up here. It's so cool because you look close, you can see the inner doors coming down and the gear starting to tuck away and the tail wheel going up. And it's cool. And the speed, the stability, I guess. The first thing I noticed when I flew it is how stable does it feel. I mean, I rolled it right off the bat there. Felt nice and stable, didn't lose any altitude. And I wasn't even full throttle. I'm just fiddling around there a little over half throttle probably. And then give it the gun to go up and do a loop. And it had plenty of guts to get up there. I was surprised. Plenty of vertical. Sometimes these warbirds, especially the foamies, are just heavy. They don't perform very well. E-flit did a good job on this one because it performs.
Well, you were saying this is your favorite, so was it the flying characteristics?
Well, the fact that it flew so easy made it, a lot. The other Mustangs I've had, I felt like, okay, they're always on the edge of a stall. Don't get it too slow. Watch out when you roll. Don't use too much elevator. If you get in trouble, be sure you ease the elevator. Otherwise, you're going to snap it. This one didn't have any of that feel to it. I mean, it just felt solid the whole time. If I wanted to yank the elevator, yank full up, I would. I mean, it felt like it was going to do what you wanted it to do.
I sometimes say that planes fly heavy, which you can also, that could be authority, but I like a light flying plane.
Yeah, I like it to be responsive. And then here, when I put the flaps down, the gear down, I'm just flying it down and dirty, just making some figure eights down close to the ground, just, and it reminded me a lot of the Carbon Z T28. The Carbon Z T28 we had, when you would set it up like this, dirty, gear down, you could just make that thing crawl across the field at what felt like 2 miles an hour. This one's a little faster than that, but it has that same sort of stable feel. It's just right there. And then tuck those gear up. There's nothing cooler than that gear tucking up like that with those inner doors coming down and going back up again. And then just poke the throttle and point the nose up and go. Rudder is plenty effective. I like doing a nice stall turn. And here I'm going around. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to do a fast pass. Well, smarty that I am, I didn't pull the flaps up yet. So I'm trying to do a high-speed pass, and the flaps are down.
Now I know if that was full scale, you could blow those right off if you're full scale.
Yeah. So probably not a good thing to do, but they held on just fine. So then I realized when I saw them go by, okay, the flaps are down. Idiot, put the flaps up.
And did you have the flaps on a knob or a switch slider?
They're actually on a switch. I've got a 3 position, so yeah. Got them for takeoff. I've got flaps up, takeoff position, and then landing.
So if you're flying and let's say you engage your flaps, do you nose up, or is there any change in how?
No, there really wasn't. I mean, they've got a setting in there for a little bit of down elevator, but it's little. It's like 5%, 7%, something like that. A pretty small number.
Did you set this up yourself? Because what I really like about a Horizon plane is I can go find, like if Matt Andren designed the plane, I can go get his setup for my transmitter, and then I just download it on the transmitter, and I know I'm running the best setup I can get.
I did not do that. I just used the manual and set it up per the manual, and it was great. I mean, there was very little trim. I was concerned because in one part of the manual, it says you need, I don't remember what it was, 1/8 of an inch down, 5% down. There was a number in there that you needed 5 millimeters of down elevator for neutral elevator. Well, and then the rest of it, it never tells you that. It says to make the surfaces straight or neutralize the surfaces. So I went ahead and did them straight. I really didn't need the down elevator in there for straight and level flight. It was just fine. But yeah, just look at that. I mean, it just felt so good. Invasion stripes make everything look good.
Right.
And so the only, it's really, victory rolls, all that kind of cool stuff. And here I am fiddling around. I'm on the flight. I'm running low on batteries, but I just couldn't resist. I had to do a little 4-point just to, say I did. I'm coming across. And try slow rolls and just fiddling around. Inverted flight. Sometimes on a maiden, or this was like the 3rd flight on the plane, you don't really want to flip it upside down and keep it there too long. But this one was really good. AS3X, again, you flip it over, it tries to help you whenever your stick is close to neutral, it'll try and keep the plane in the last orientation. And when it was inverted, it felt really good. Just took, just a little bit of pressure on the stick, which I like, a little bit of down elevator, because that keeps it reminding me that way is up. Keep
Right.
pushing. And,
Right.
the old saying about down is up and up is expensive when you're inverted. So
Right.
don't go the wrong way.
Well, the other trick is getting the rudder going the right way too.
Yeah. Yeah, there is that. And so my first approach here, it's only the third flight, and I'm coming in, and I kind of cut it short, and wasn't a whole lot of wind that day, and I'm just going, I could probably get it down, but I'd probably run off the end of the runway, and I didn't really want to do that. So let's try going around again. So the gear's still down, the flaps are still down. I just kind of powered up and went around and going to make another approach. I'm coming back around here, and then Jesse did a good job. He always likes to get the back of my head in there for some reason. And of course, the wind's blowing a crosswind towards me, so it's blowing the plane towards me. And I'm trying to set it up and be smooth, and I still got a bump. But look at those flaps hanging down there. Isn't that pretty?
Very sexy.
So the negative on this one, I guess the only down report on any of the flying has been the landings. Landing a P-51 has always been kind of a challenge. And with this one, unfortunately, it has to do with the fact that the wheels are a little hard, and the gear springs in the gear themselves are a little stiff. So it doesn't really want to absorb those shocks really well. So you kind of get a bounce, and it's really hard to land smooth without a bounce. And I kind of pride myself on making really nice, smooth landings. So it's been a bit of a challenge. I've been having to practice to try and get that, not having much luck. One of the fellows has said that what he ended up doing was getting some Robart 3.5-inch low bounce wheels and putting them on there, and that made all the difference in the world. So I may try that. All right, so if you'll go back up there, though, that was the gear picture. See the plane on the left there? One of the landings, after I landed, I looked, and here the gear door, or the main gear door on the left there, it's just hanging loose. It's kind of flapping in the breeze. Well, I looked at it real close. You can see that a pin on the back edge of it had broken. So right there. So in the next one down, you can see that one pin is missing. There should be a pin in the front and a pin in the back, and it broke off. Well, in talking to the customer support folks at Horizon, they told me that, yeah, that was kind of a problem. The material for the gear doors themselves is kind of brittle. And because it's a little brittle, it tends to break when maybe it shouldn't. So what they've done is they've changed the actual plastic. And if you look at that picture on the right there, the one with the gear door with the letter A on it, is a darker colored plastic. It's kind of a gray instead of a white. When you take it and flex it, you can tell it's more flexible, more rubbery, I guess is the way to describe it. So the diameter of the pins is the same, so they'll fit in there, even though they look just a little bigger. When I put the micrometer on them, they were basically the same. So anyway, that's their fix. And I put it on mine, and I've had a lot of flights since then.
That's
still
good,
making landings that may not be perfect. So the gear doors are hanging in there.
Well, all right.
And I made a notation. I think, if you call up folks at Horizon and talk to them, you're having gear door troubles, they'll work with you.
Well, I would ask you where you're going to fly this, because generally you head out to a show somewhere, and somebody might be listening, might see it. But
normally I would fly. My plan this year was to fly this one at CEF. I really wanted to take it to CEF and fly it there. This was the main plane that I was going to have for bragging rights at CEF this year. So that was the plan. The review was finished before CEF was scheduled, and I wanted to be flying it on the flight line. And that just didn't quite happen.
Well,
so maybe next year.
Yep. We had some live viewers today. We had Brian Chambers, as usual. Brian's always on. Sam says, great stream. And Brian says he's heard good things about the Robart wheels. Doyle Blevins was in, so thank all of y'all. Mike, I think that we should do this on every review you do. After the review is up and everything's cut, we go through the review step by step and you just kind of talk about it. I think it's awesome.
Well, I think it may add something to it. I hope that the guys that are listening get a little bit more out of it. And if we put the link in the review itself, maybe it can help some folks.
Yep. So what I'm going to do at some point between now and Monday, because Monday is Memorial Day and I have a mass email going out, but I'm going to get a story going. We're going to feature this thing and get a link back to the review so you'll have even more content on the P-51. I want to thank you for all that you do, Mike, man. I don't know that I say thank you enough, but I always appreciate your reviews.
Well, thank you for what you do for the sport, because, without RCGroups and without Horizon and groups like this, we wouldn't be the sport we are today. And it's when we get the word out, we're going to get new people in the game. That's what it's all about.
Yep. So be sure and get on RCGroups and make a post. We have a contest going right now with MKS. Over $800 worth of servos. You can find it stickied at the top of the general section of Electric Flight. Also, you could go to flygiants.com and it's on there as well. So be sure and get in there. I'm trying to promote that as many ways as possible. Of course, that's a limited time only. And otherwise, have a great weekend, everyone. You too, Mike. And thanks for joining us.
Good Memorial Day.
Yep. And thanks to everyone out there. I'm Jim T. Graham with RC Groups, Mike McDougal, and we're out of here.